Thanks for joining us for our March edition of our Kentucky K-12 Education Technology Leaders Webcast. I'm David Couch, joined by Dee Dee Cotter, Marty Park, and Mike Lettingham, and a few others. This is going to be an abbreviated edition since we just finished the KISTE conference. By the way, the KISTE conference set a record for attendance, so congratulations to all those attended and in the KISTE leadership. We also have Go Soapbox up if you have questions that we ask. You want to ask during the webcast. We don't have any questions for you to respond to or poll questions for you to respond to. So I'll jump straight to the first topic. It's a 2019 legislative session. We'll have more on this in April when everything has gone through everything it needs to go through. But as of now, there is one bill that impacts education technology that has made it all the way through the gamut of the House and Senate and signed by the governor's office. And also because it was called an emergency bill, it became effective immediately. Most bills become effective in July, and this is Senate Bill 1. And it had a component that involved education technology email, which will be provided by, for the foreseeable future, by the Center for School Safety, voice by Homeland Security. That'll be expanded. And the application is supposed to be part of it, but it's not been developed yet. I can just tell you it's in the early stages, the beta stages of that, and the plus and minus associated with that, so that's not out there. As I talked with two different co-ops on this that I've been in front of, Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative and KDC, is what I told the superintendents there, besides the technology piece, do you have the people side, the people capacity to keep up with all the logs that are coming to a district? So it's one thing to capture, it's another thing for you to look at it and then go through all of them and then investigate them and respond to them. So that's just a heads up to them. I don't have an answer associated with that. I do know like Montgomery County bought a service that actually does that screening for them, but most school districts have not done that, so just a heads up on that. Number two, our E-rate submission deadline of March 27th. So Mike, I'm going to let you talk to that just a little bit, and then I have some follow-up comments I'm going to
Okay, so obviously we want to remind folks, as we have been doing, that you want to get your E-rate applications in before 11:59 p.m. on March 27th. The other thing that we want to make sure that we really highlight to folks is this is officially the 5th year of the 5-year budget window. Now there's been some confusion on what that means because the way the FCC ruling that was done 5 years ago identified that was that the 5-year window started in 2015 and ended in 2019. However, there was language, or the way it was discussed as far as being executed is that your 5-year window would not start until your first year of receiving funding. But again, the rulemaking itself says that the 5-year window ends on 2019. So what we want everybody to be aware of is that we have no way of assuring that a sliding window will actually occur, meaning that if you didn't start receiving funding until the second year, that you would have until 2020 to still exercise that 5-year window. And one of the important things about this 5-year budget window was that it really did distribute the funds in an equitable fashion, and that was the whole purpose of doing that, was that it really did provide a very close to 100% assurance that you would get funded for whatever you applied for. So we really want to encourage everybody to make sure that they file in this officially 5th year of the 5-year window, not knowing whether there will be, again, a sliding 5th year for anybody that didn't start during the first year. We know that the FCC has to make a new rulemaking sometime this summer, and that could either be a continuation of the 5-year budget framework, which would be, I think, a beneficial and a good thing because I think it has worked well. I think all reports have showed that it's worked well. It could revert back to something like the 2 of 5 rule where you could only apply 2 out of 5 years, or it could be some other way of framework of how they would distribute the funds on Category 2 and Category 1 as far as that goes. So the important point we want to make is you really need to try and file during this particular funding year in order to assure that you have as close to 100% guarantee that you're going to get funding for whatever it is that you apply for. So I think that was a main point we wanted to make on this.
Well, I had a couple others. As you said, while nothing's always 100% guarantee, this window has been as close to 100% guarantee as you can get, correct?
Right. I mean, that's it.
So no district we've had has been turned down during this time.
Guaranteed to receive money.
Guaranteed to receive the money back. So I think it's even though you may be a year 3 district or year 4 district, there's a level of risk
Right.
of not applying because we understand that it is almost near 100% guarantee. This time it may not be. I don't know if it'll be a 95% guarantee, a 50%. We don't know what it is.
It
but
may be the
there's-
exact same thing, and it is. It's an unknown.
It's unknown. So, but it is not unknown within this time frame.
Right.
So there's a level of risk we want to make sure folks are aware of. The second part I'd like to say to you is, I remember I have a good superintendent friend of mine that retired, and he would always tell folks, because, you know, they would say, defend me. And he says, well, don't put me in a situation where I can't defend you. He says, I will defend you, but don't put me in a situation where I can't defend you. And this is one of the situations to where it could be an opportunity lost, but bad PR gained, to be honest with you. And so the big piece of this is that is defendable. That if you have met everything you needed to buy, you have everything you have there, I call it flush. Everything is up to date. You don't have anything out of service. All the technology is modern, but you have X amount of dollars left. That's defendable. You know, as people have brought this to our attention over the past year, is and Education Superhighway, just so you know, sent a communication to our governor's office about the specific districts that could let money lapse. And our first response to them, and this was several months ago, was, well, if a district has bought everything they need to buy and they've left X amount on the table, then they're just being frugal and a good steward of federal taxpayer dollars that we all pay. But if you still have a need, a pretty big need, and you have not spent it, that is more difficult to defend. And I would give two defenses. One is you're saying, well, the school district can't come up with X amount of the non-discounted portion. And obviously, we would help in those discussions with superintendents and chief financial officers to show, hey, by the way, you're getting 80 to 90% off of something that has already had X amount off because it's got an educational discount. This is a tremendous financial opportunity that may not come this way. Again, as Mike said, it was set up as much like the CATS program was in the early years, is to provide equity across the board. Everybody got an opportunity to get flush with technology. Previously, you had districts replacing this stuff every 2 or 3 years across the country, and therefore there wasn't money left. And so what they did is they said, we're stopping that for this period of time to give every district, despite no matter what their financial situation was, whether one of the wealthiest districts or one of the poorest, a chance to get all their technology flush and in space. So this is, I know we've had our field staff getting with the districts, and I know superintendents have told me this, and anytime I've spoken with superintendents, they said, they being the superintendent says, I want to know, being the superintendent, if there's a possibility of me losing X percent of money. They said that you have an obligation is, I know you're working with certain folks in districts, but if there's a chance I'm going to lose money, right, then I want that brought to my attention. And so we don't have a lot of districts in this situation, but we have instructed our staff to talk with the CFO and the superintendents to really make sure they're aware, and there may be good reasons. Once again, your district may be flush with technology. That's a great reason. Or if the superintendent is saying, we don't have the money, this going through to them talking about what a great opportunity it is. But it can't be, and we've had this situation, I call it the sorriness factor, and I don't know a better way to say it, to where people just didn't want to fill out the paperwork. And that's not happened a lot, but it has happened. And so we have to bring that to the attention of the superintendent, and we have in the past, and that was addressed. But that's been the minimal thing, is we do think, a very high percentage, 95% are trying, hard charge and doing the right thing. But just so you know, lots of eyes are on this, eyes way beyond us. As I said, the Education Superhighway looked at that. National. Yeah. They communicated directly to our governor's office. We had to respond to that. And so, like I said, we don't want this to be an opportunity lost and bad PR gain. I think you avoid bad PR if you show you're totally flush. But the other things to where there's large amounts left on the table, especially depending upon your size of district, are more difficult to defend.
Two connections, David. I think, just last week at our CIO Summit, we had the opportunity to talk about this. This is that differentiated, communication channel that we discussed last week at length and at detail. And then also, what a great leadership opportunity, to really get with all the, your leadership team in district to discuss the opportunity. And if you've already, pushed past from a funding mechanism with E-rate here, celebrate that. We've already while we have some districts scrambling to clean this up and make sure we're utilizing all our funds, we're already fully utilized.
Right. Thanks, and we'll take comments. Like I say, it's abbreviated, and we'll take a look at your Go Soapbox. You can talk to us individually about it. Mike, the CAT's third offer.
Yeah, I mean, it's straightforward. Obviously, we've talked about that off and on for several months, and so the third offer is scheduled to go. Nothing's going to derail that at this point that we foresee. So $5 per ADA, we should be able to move forward with those for sure at the beginning of April timeframe. So look for those to be happening.
Okay. Dee Dee, we got a couple of data side things there.
We do have a few data things. So we've got requests that's gone out to superintendents to update the school directory. That is what you'll find when you go to the open house site, openhouse.education.ky.gov, and you school and district directories online there. It also includes people, role manager information, and it's important to think about that because KDE uses those distribution lists to communicate with counselors, to communicate with cases, points of contact, and all the other indicators that are out there. So if you're not keeping those updated, then you run the risk of not getting the information to the right people. So it's real important right now to look at the demographics data for schools and districts, make sure that's correct, that the school data needs to get updated. That's done through the web application DASAR. If the people role manager, if people information is updated, that gets updated through people role manager, so make sure that gets done. There are folks looking at that where they're trying to create basically a PDF that could be shared outside of KDE as necessary with district and school contacts, similar to what we used to do with the paper directory. They're just not doing the paper directory any longer, but they're definitely using that as the source of information. And once they create those PDFs, they have a tendency to have a lifespan beyond just a regular online vehicle. So keep that in mind. The other thing is we've got civil rights data collection. Deadline is still a month away. It's actually a little bit more than a month, April 24th. We've got 15 districts that have already certified. So if you're one of those districts, pat yourself on the back. You're one of a few that have, gotten it done already. KDE did populate a lot of that data. It's still the responsibility of the districts to validate the data and do the final certification. We cannot do that for you. So we've done all we can. Our hands are tied, except for just to remind you all at this point to make sure. And if you're not the right person, please make sure that the right person at your district is engaged. They should be getting information from Candy Johnson. If you don't find anybody that's getting that, it may be that no one's on task right now for it. So help us with that communication and ensuring that somebody at the schools and districts are working on that data. We have another collection. This is one we do every single year, what we call the front door project, and that's to calculate the coordinates for each of the schools' front doors. If none of your schools have moved, your district office is the same place it's been, your front doors haven't changed, you're good. You don't have anything to do on this one. But if you've had new schools, if you had any changes to your school locations or maybe the door you're using for entrance, it is the time now that we'd like you to update those coordinates. We share those with the Commonwealth Office of Technology. That information is shared beyond that. So it does give your schools an opportunity to make sure that they aren't on the map. So that deadline on that is April 22nd. We always align with Earth Day, so that's our Earth Day celebration. School report card.
Go Earth Day.
School report card. You'll see the next release in May. That's going to have the finance data on it. That'll be the final release really for year one, the 17-18 data release. We are already working on year two and trying to fine tune what changes will be made going forward. But do be aware that there'll be one more release of that, and it will be focused on the finance data, and we expect additional information going out. Districts and schools should have already. Some may decide they want to wait till the finance data goes in. There's no real requirement to do that, but already provided the information to parents. We provided, you can use the URL that's specific to your schools and districts to communicate that out. We've sent information out on that. Districts are required to make sure it gets in the newspaper. I think if your local newspaper covered your school, your district release, you may be covered just on the fact that they already did it, because that would meet the letter of the law. If not, you need to work with the local school district offices and make sure the papers have that information. And it's the paper with the highest circulation in the county. So keep that in mind. We do have some Infinite Campus training opportunities coming up. We have the next 2 weeks, we'll have folks out at regional locations across the state doing a KDE update, and Infinite Campus trainers will be there. Hopefully you've got folks in your schools and districts that have registered for that training. If not, and you need more information, check out our CASES training page online on the KDE website. Then we have some end of year training that's scheduled for April 25th. So that's our online training that we do 3 times a year. That training will be, the agenda will go out, and more information is also on that CASES training page. I think that covers all my items.
So I just say
Very quick.
we had districts going, where's the paper book? Where's the paper book on the school's directory? So I
Yes,
just want to
we
make you
got-
sure the
yeah.
reason we're talking about it is there's no paper book. We had a couple of different reasons, but mainly finances. Everybody's aware, really, for the past decade, we've been on this decline of funding. Definitely KD, the agency, has been hammered pretty hard. And I know school districts have as well. So that was one of the items that was put in nice to have versus got to have. But it's just interesting when folks don't see it, they go, where is this thing at? I do consider this a win because, as Dee Dee knows, there was different ways to collect that data from KD, the agency. And now we have one single way that we're collecting it. And we've talked to different program areas here to say this is going to be our authoritative source. And so that's why you're seeing us. Let's keep this up to date. If you don't, what you'll have happen here at KD, they'll start sending out these spreadsheets again and going, this didn't do it. Therefore, we're going to go around it and send out the spreadsheets.
We're actually following some of our principles on
Our
a
best
healthy-
practice principles on
healthy data diet.
Healthy
right?
data diet. So,
Collect it once and
Collect it
use
once.
it.
so that's why, once again, and we recognized, that you may not lead the data effort, but please let the right person know, because it's good for everybody. This helps clean up multiple ways this data has been collected over the years to one authoritative source. So please help us with that. And the front door project, I want to make sure we do turn this over to the Commonwealth Office of Technology, but it's bigger than that. It goes into our geographical information system. Bob, what is the correct thing of that?
GIS, Geographic Information System.
Okay, so I did say it right.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're on it.
Okay, good. Well, I can tell you Homeland Security uses that data. So, so they're probably the most interested in where's the front door. So if no other reason than that is please provide us that information. But there's a lot of different things that go into that system that help keep a background of what is available visually. So I want to make sure you did take the effort to do that and fill that out. We've always got good cooperation. Typically, our STLP students are the ones, they're the ones that help us. So it's a win-win for us in doing that. Mike, we have a couple announcements about on the technology side.
Yeah, this is really awareness, and I think we've mentioned these in the past as far as we were working on them. We've got 2 different areas where we've got really aged and out-of-date equipment that we've been working on what's the best option and solution to replace these services. One is the network switches that we have in every district location, every district hub site. Those are way out of date, and there's been some districts that obviously have felt the blunt of that because there's been failures, and we've had to kind of scramble about how we provide replacements, being that they're out of date, out of warranty, and all those kind of variables, as well as the out-of-band management tool that we have in place, which allows access to the district hub sites for maintenance and repair service type access without, whenever there's not network or internet, regular internet access. And so both of those, we've identified our solutions for replacing those, updating those network switches, as well as those out-of-band management devices. We'll be working with AT&T to provide those solutions, and we'll begin pretty immediately on working on that. We'll kind of have a schedule. It should be really very minimal or non-disruptive to the school district. There could be a slight amount of disruption, but obviously we'll schedule that. But it's like we do anything that when we work at a district location on the network and so forth. So we expect to have those completed really throughout the summertime, both of those. So we'll be moving on those. And again, it's an awareness item. Districts need to be aware that that's happening.
Thank you. I did want to circle back to a Go Soapbox question. Marty, what was the question?
So question came in, and it's gotten bumped up several by at least 6 folks. Will there be more information on what requirements are to be implemented because of this year's Senate Bill 1?
Right, so good question.
Yep.
And we just want to introduce it to you. So the next step that'll occur is, a few weeks ago, I met with Homeland Security and Center for School Safety, and there were 4 school districts there. So we talked about this subject. I suspect now, and I'll be seeing a note now that I saw it's final,
Yep.
and this is also a good reminder of when are we meeting again, to get an update on how we're going to do email, how we're going to do voice, and how we're going to do the app, and I'll share that with you, what's going to be available. The app is, like I say, the furthest behind.
Yep.
And I don't know how long that's going to take to get to a place that's going to be solid, but just a heads up to the districts and the people side of it.
And that's in terms of anonymous reporting.
Anonymous reporting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying. So let's talk about eSports for a few minutes. We recognize that there's some students that play eSports, and it can be a sanctioned event with High School Athletic Association or some other organization that you have. We want to make sure that most of these sporting games were created for really unfiltered access at the home. And so what anyone that's doing eSports and actually wants it to run from a K-12 building has to get more in tune with internet content management systems and networks in K-12 buildings. And so as we see those is whenever we say turn off some general settings in the internet content management system, for example, is light speed, that's going to get big pushback from us because we think the developer should do that, and also turning off a lot of ports. And so the folks in this arena admit that there's a big blind spot between developers and what it takes to work in a K-12 setting, because they've traditionally they're playing these from home, and now they want to transition to where there's they're in some kind of sports competition within the school building. And so they have to adapt to that and probably have those in their labs as they're developing code. So like I say, you're going to see strong pushback, and we've already talked to one that's doing that. They gave directions to turn off some general settings and light speed, and we said that's not going to happen because here are all the other negative consequences and risks that are associated with doing that. So these will all be topics we'll talk about a little bit more in depth. Once again, this is an abbreviated webcast, so we're going through these pretty quickly. But once again, is before you alter any of those, you need to make sure we are aware of that because it's running on a K-12 KD-led network. The other thing is that we're going to be working on is when's the appropriate time these games should be played. One thing that I can say over the course of my lifetime, even going back to the early days of the internet, is the average person is either oblivious or intentionally doesn't care the impact they have on others on the network. And we've seen that over and over again where one individual or a small group are just crushing the rest of the network and take away the response rates, basically, of people trying to do other things during the school time. An example I will give is Dragonfly. And this is in the coaching arena, and I know that everyone keeps up with sports or coaches, but when I was in sports back in the 70s and 80s, 70s and 80s, coaches exchange game film. I mean, it's common practice after you play, you share your game film with your opponents, and they do the same thing with you. And there was a way that you did that, reel to reel. Well, fast forward to today's times, and coaches don't want to travel because you'd have to travel or it would take time to get there. And so there was a product called Dragonfly many years ago. Not too many years ago, I guess it may be 10 years ago. And the coaches promised, Marty, they promised, they would not send any of the game film before 4 p.m. Absolutely promised, understood, they were educated, they were coached on the negative impact sending a huge amount of game file on primetime school hours. What percentage of coaches you think did that before 4 p.m.?
There was a significant percentage.
Yeah. You think it was more than 10%?
Yeah, I do.
You think it was more than 20?
Yeah.
More than 70?
100%, David. Was it 100?
It wasn't 100%, Bob, but it was 95%.
Oh my God.
So there was 5%, despite the great coaching and understanding of here's the negative consequences. But once again, it's either they're oblivious to it or saying, well, this is just me this one time. And so you got to always take that in consideration. But it was crushing the instructional network during the school time. So the same thing applies here with particularly these games is when is the appropriate time? Now I know that one of the sanctioned events has it starting between 4 and 5, and that's after school hours. And even practiced, because I can just see people going to these labs and say, I want to practice, I don't have a class, and not understanding the negative consequences they can have. So we're going to discuss when is the appropriate window of time to play and what actions do we take, just like these. So we had to do with these coaches, because we did it not once, not twice, but 3 times, tried to educate them on it. And not once, not twice, but 3 times, 95% of the coaches, and my son's also a high school coach, were sending during primetime school hours. And so what we had to do, we had to take a technical, I don't like to have a technical solution to a behavioral problem. We had to address it with the coaches and make it so they could only send them after 4 p.m. and not before a certain time. And so I suspect the same thing, and we'll educate folks, but same thing will apply in this arena.
I really like the message and just emphasizing if you haven't had this discussion internally to your district, I think your message right now is get involved. Start
Yeah.
asking questions. Start trying to figure out which schools in your district are thinking about participating
Yep.
or having
Yep.
the initial discussion. So that's a strong.
I think the other discussion is this one. What games are appropriate and not appropriate to be played from a K-12 device and from a K-12 building through a K-12 network by a K-12 student? And we're going to be taking a close look at that. So there's eSports games that I think of sports, the soccer or basketball or baseball, but then there's the combat battle games that have weapons. They have slice them up, blow them up, shoot them up, and they have kills. So while those may be played at home, is that appropriate use from a K-12 setting to be playing those? And so that's the discussions that will be going forward. Obviously, with some traditional sports games, that's easier to justify than the other ones that we have there. So I just want to let you know that we'll be discussing those going forward. Marty, there's two things you want to talk about related to STLP and students competition. So I'm letting you
Absolutely.
have,
So far again this year, another record-breaking year for STLP. Last week it was awesome to have STLP students at Kisti. Again, thank you, Kisti, for the great partnership there. Students were awesome and did a great job, our STLP engineers. So we have a deadline coming up of March 24th, and that's a deadline to register for state. Again, that's midnight at Sunday evening, midnight. And as we know, depending on how STLP is structured in your district, our STLP school sponsors are getting a lot of information, are getting reminders, but as EdTech leaders, we just wanted to make sure that you were tuned into that and could help notify and push there as well. So everyone knows state championship is April 18th. We have great programming set already. A lot of details are working out.
Are we going to do our STLP, but our webcast from, you think we're going to be able to do that?
We absolutely are. We're going to, our next webcast will be live at STLP State Championships.
Yeah.
We're really excited about that. It'll be a different program.
In our webcast, we're talking about this one. Normally we do for K-12 CIOs and tech leaders. Yeah.
Yep. So it'll be a different program, and we're working on that. But it'll be fun. I think it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a lot of buzz, and hopefully we'll have some students live and some other leaders. So the other thing we did want to mention is that April 22nd and 23rd, TSA has the state conference, and we're trying in OET here at the Department of Ed to be more involved with TSA as well. That'll be in Louisville at the Crown Plaza Hotel. So just wanted to mention to be alert for that, and if you have schools that are participating in TSA, which fits in pretty nicely with students using technology to make and produce stuff. So be tuned into that. If you have any questions, Mark Harrell here at the Department of Ed, that's Mark Harrell, Harrell.
Is there any other things bubbling up on Go Soapbox?
Nothing at all.
There's not.
All right. Well,
Quiet bunch.
thanks for joining us for this abbreviated version, and we'll see you next month from the STLP State Championship.
That's right. That's
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.